show the dyslexia? Oh,
I'll call our work session to order. Dr. Mack, you'll be with us in just a moment. Just as a reminder, if you would, silence your devices for our work session. And I'll open us up today in a word of prayer. Gracious and loving God, we just come before you and ask for your provision and protection over our students today, Lord. We pray for their safety, God, and we just lift up the family that's lost a child this last week in Alabama, and pray for them today, Lord, and strengthen them as they attend the funeral of their child, Lord. And we cannot even imagine the pain, Father, but be with them and strengthen them. We pray, dear God, for those overseas right now in Israel. We pray for the families that have lost loved ones. We pray, Father, that in the midst of all the devastation of war, Lord, that you would be there, that you would protect those families, Father, that you would be in the midst of that horrible situation. God, there are no words for what we've seen. But Lord, we look to you and trust you. Again, we ask that you be with us today. Bless the work of our hands today on behalf of our students and our state. In Christ's name, amen.
Amen.
We did not get to see the videos in the regular meeting, and so we're going to watch those first before we begin with our agenda. Thank you.
Mr. Both at the same time? I'll just first. That way there.
Sure.
That way.
The Alabama Reading Initiative Science of Reading Spotlight Schools. The Alabama Reading Initiative has a goal of ensuring all students can read by the end of 3rd grade. Science of Reading Spotlight Schools bring a lab experience to literacy leaders in kindergarten through 3rd grade schools so they can see, envision, and implement science of reading structures. It brings school literacy leaders, including administrators, local reading specialists, and teachers together to learn and grow from one another through relationships, rigor, relevance, and reflection. How are they selected? Quantitative and qualitative data are both used to determine Science of Reading Spotlight Schools. And our Science of Reading Spotlight Schools are New Brockton Elementary, Coffee County; Beauregard Elementary, Lee County; Randolph Elementary, Bibb County; Central Elementary, Tuscaloosa City; Lipscomb Elementary, Jefferson County; Hitlala Elementary, Montgomery Public; University Charter School; Robert E. Lee Elementary, Satsuma City; Pinemont Elementary, Coleman County; Alexandria Elementary, Calhoun County; Whedon Elementary, Florence City; Geraldine Elementary, DeKalb County; Russellville City School District; and Crenshaw County School District. Congratulations, Science of Reading Spotlight Schools. Stay tuned for opportunities to visit Science of Reading Spotlight Schools.
The Alabama Reading Initiative celebrates Dyslexia Awareness Month.
All right, so now let's code and read. I see a vowel in a closed syllable is short. Code it with a
Breathe.
I see an N before a K, so I code it with a
Hook.
G hook. And that word is
Honk.
honk. Good.
According to the International Dyslexia Association, up to 20% of any given population have some symptoms of dyslexia. In Alabama, that would equate to approximately 148,000 public school students who have difficulty with accurate and/or fluent word recognition and poor spelling and poor decoding abilities. Defined by the Literacy Act as a learning challenge or disability that is neurological in origin, children with dyslexia and all struggling readers can become proficient readers by receiving diagnostic, prescriptive, systematic, explicit, sequential instruction from a multisensory language education trained instructor, such as a certified academic language therapist or CALT. With the passage of the Alabama Literacy Act in 2019, all kindergarten through third grade students are now screened for reading deficits and then given targeted interventions to address those deficits. If there is a consistent deficiency, a reading improvement plan is developed and implemented to drill down and be even more specific on a struggling reader's deficit area. Screening for dyslexia is now done for any student who does not respond to these very explicit and targeted interventions. Screening for dyslexia uses assessments outlined in the Dyslexia Resource Guide. Students who are found to have the characteristics of dyslexia now receive dyslexic-specific interventions. Parents are kept informed at every step in the process and about their child's progress. Certified Academic Language Therapists, or CALTs, undergo intensive training in an international multisensory structured Education Council approved multisensory structured language education intervention program. Over 200 hours of coursework and 700 clinical teaching hours of the program must be completed before a candidate can take the Academic Language Therapy Association's exam to be a certified academic language therapist. There are currently 80 CALTs serving in Alabama public schools. In addition to working with students and providing dyslexic-specific intervention, CALTs also participate in the problem-solving team, in the administration of universal screeners, and analyzing data at their local school. The state of Alabama hopes to grow the number of interventionists that are certified academic language therapists. Currently, the number of CALTs in training, along with those in schools, represent 75 districts. In public schools across Alabama, CALTs provide intervention for students with dyslexia. The following videos are brief examples of this type of instruction.
That initial letter for me. The final letter is D. The exact middle letters are M and N.
Have you do before we switch, I want you to put your left hand, that would be this one and this one, under the A. I'm going to let you choose uppercase or lowercase. It does not matter to me. But I need you to put your finger on that one. Then I take your right finger and put that on the M. M as in mop. All right, now we're going to point to and name those letters, please. But we are not going to race and we are not going to scream. We're going to point to it, then name it, and then slide. We ready? Go. A, B, C, D, E.
Interventionists and CALTs often collaborate with the local reading specialist. This partnership between the local reading specialist and the CALT is vital to the success of all students. Let's listen as an LRS talks about this partnership.
Hi, I'm Erica Lynn Holsey, Reading Specialist at Valley Junior High School. We're very blessed in Walker County to have Meredith Harris as our dyslexia specialist. Since she's CALT trained, she is very integral in working with our students after we have assessed which students are in need of dyslexia intervention. She comes in and works with our students several days a week.
The partnership with the CALT often extends outside the school. Parents are grateful for the support and knowledge they provide.
I'm thankful for Ms. Harris and this program that she has provided for my child, Mary Patton. She has helped me advocate for my child as well as gain a better understanding of her dyslexia.
Partnering together, we can achieve our goal of all students reading at or above grade level by the end of the third grade. The Alabama Reading Initiative would like to thank the Literacy Task Force, the Alabama Dyslexia Advisory Council, and the International Dyslexia Association of Alabama for working closely with us to implement the directives of the Alabama Literacy Act. We appreciate your guidance and input, as well as the work to give every child every chance, every day. Want to learn more about what Alabama is doing to support students with dyslexia? Contact your local ARI Regional Literacy Specialist.
Madam Chair, may I make a comment?
Sure.
My grandson, we learned early on, because his parents are both educators, that he was dyslexic. In second grade, his ACAP score was in the low 20s. After these interventions came into his classroom in his school, his next ACAP score was in the upper 90s. That's my testimony of how good we're doing with students who have those difficulties.
Thank you for sharing that. Yes, ma'am.
I have another grandmother testimony. I had the opportunity of attending my grandson's literacy parent night at McAdory Elementary School. And I was so impressed with the presentation that was done by the principal and the reading coach. And I just want to say hats off to Alabama Reading Initiative for providing them with all of the information that they needed. The parents left there feeling assured and comforted that their children were in good hands. So we are seeing firsthand that things are happening.
That's great.
Thank you. Thank you, Tracy.
Excuse me, and that grandmother called me to tell me that it was obvious that there were school districts that were listening to the work that you all were putting out there, and that they were being very appreciative. So I also called the superintendent because of that grandmother. So thank you.
Well, of course, we grandmothers know.
I see
Yes, yes.
Thank you so much. Well, we're going to begin with our first item on the agenda. Dr. Mackey.
So we have one program from the University of Alabama at Birmingham. I think Dr. Corcoran is with us. She was with us earlier. Here she comes.
She is.
And Dr. Alethea Hampton here from the department. And you see this, it's a AA school psychology program. So I'm excited to learn about it. What
Yes.
you guys are doing.
Yes, I'm very excited about this as well. We are starting a program to help teachers and school psychometrists who want to re-specialize to be school psychologists. And this is a program that they can do while they're still working in their school districts. And the school districts will kind of grow up their school psychologists with the help of UAB so that we can really meet the individualized needs of those districts. We've had a tremendous interest for a program like this, and we're seeing all kinds of increased behavior issues, unfortunately, increased suicide ideation, things like this, that the teachers are begging for help. I spoke to a teacher yesterday who, her classroom yesterday was torn upside down, desks thrown, chairs thrown, kids were injured, and she's just desperate for help. And she said there's no one in the school that is equipped to deal with that kind of behavior. And so we want to train up school psychologists to help teachers teach and help students have the ability to be more successful. And so we're really excited about this. We are completely standards-based. We hope to get started as soon as possible because of the dire need with our kids today.
And one thing I really appreciated about the proposal that was submitted by UAB, very thorough, very well done. But in addition to that, everything pointed back to how it's going to benefit the student. So each of the indicators, although they did meet all of the standards in the proposal, yet and still they were able to tie those back into how ultimately it would benefit P through 12 student learning.
Great. Yes.
We hear so much about putting those behavioral therapists in the classroom. Is this about from which they will come from this program?
No, this program is where we would train up school psychologists that work more globally. They can also do assessments where they can look into what is the function of this behavior, where is this behavior coming from, and then work in a consultative manner with the teachers and the parents and the other professionals and interdisciplinary team members within the school. They will be receiving training in how to provide some direct services to the students, but a lot of times it's a more consultative model so that it's working in a multidisciplinary team. So they would not be called a behavior
Gotcha. So you see like one of those per district or, one per school? What is your vision about the end product?
Well, the National Association of School Psychologists recommends one school psychologist for every 500 students. We are nowhere near that. We're about 1 in 10,000 here in Alabama. So the ultimate goal, would be 1 in 500, but we want to start with where we can. I know certain districts around us in Birmingham are hiring school psychologists. They're desperate for them. I get principals calling me, how can you help us? So the goal is 1 in 500. I think that's far off, but that's what we're working towards.
Good goal to me. Right. Well, thank you.
What will be your capacity, your initial capacity?
So in order to stay in compliance with the national accreditation standards from the National Association of School Psychologists, we need to have 1 faculty to every 12 graduate students. So right now, the goal is to recruit and retain 12, and then we hope to add faculty members so that we can continue to grow the program. So our first cohort would be 12.
And did you say the beginning date of your beginning of this?
We want to start as soon as possible, so we're hoping after today
So
that we
you're
can
ready
start
to
in
go.
spring.
You got
We're ready.
everything
We're ready to roll. Yeah.
Thank you.
Board members, any other comments? We thank you so much for coming today. We certainly don't expect you to stay. We know you're busy, so feel free to step out or stay, whichever you prefer.
That's
Thank
exciting.
you.
Thank you.
Keep us abreast about how's it going.
So the next two, Kathy Jones, I think, there she is, if you would come up. So we have 2 changes to the 2022. I was confused myself, so I had to get clarification on this. Not 23, these are changes to or revisions to the 22 Career Tech course of study, and Ms. Jones can explain.
So actually, we had 2 sets of 22 Career Tech courses of study. You all approved some early in the year, and then we, because there was a delay in the actual presenting and voting for that, and so then we did another round. So this is addressing the first round, and the first one has to do with the insurance courses and the finance course of study, and this is actually a very innovative partnership. The Alabama Independent Insurance Agents approached the Career Technical Education to get these courses that would directly lead to students can sit for a credential test right after these courses. But they were initially written as half credit courses. They were not written as full credit courses. So it is to great benefit to the students in the state for these to be offered in the full credit option. So that's what this change is. And in the process of looking at the course names and thinking about the full credit option, the realization was that some of the course names had to change. And so that's what happened here. So the full credit option is really a consolidation of a couple of courses. There's the first 2, the insurance one is the first 2 courses, and then the insurance 2 is the second 2 courses. So there are opportunities for 2 full credits. But there were a couple of duplicated standards, and then there was looking at some of the wording of the standards, and some of the wording of the standards was not directly measurable, and we want our standards to be measurable. And so, for instance, the word discuss was replaced with a measurable outcome, like explain, not just discuss it in class, but the students should be able to explain what is going on with that insurance concept. So there were a few changes that were all approved by the committee, and so they wanted to bring that to the board to see if that change could be made in the course of study to benefit Alabama students in working toward credentials, and also for the graduation indicators that were passed. The half credit options are not necessarily meeting the graduation indicators in a way that a full credit course would.
And that's for both of those, so that's items 2 and 3 on our agenda.
Okay, so I didn't talk.
No, that's fine. I just wanted to make
I was just
sure.
pausing to see if
So,
they had questions.
any questions on 2 before you go to 3? That's
Because this one
great.
is a totally separate scenario. So for the work-based learning in the career preparedness courses, that the financial literacy law, there was a hard look taken at which courses might be used to meet the course requirement for the financial literacy law. And the course that most closely aligned with the 9 provisions in the financial literacy law was career preparedness and career technical education. So in evaluating that course, it was found that that there was just a little tweak that needed to be to meet all of the 9 provisions for the mathematics and the financial mathematics that was needed. So the proposal is to add 3 standards to the career preparedness course to allow that course to meet all of the provisions that were written into the law. And the committee approved, this committee was separate, a different group worked on this one, so this committee approved it for career preparedness.
And as a reminder, at what grade level is that financial literacy?
Okay, so, that is something that we are working on.
Okay.
Because there are some parts of it that right now can be in the 8th grade.
Right,
So
okay.
that is what we're working with the career and technical education section to look at what needs to be done so that the first cohort coming through will comply with the law. That's what we're trying to do.
Okay, thank you.
Any questions on one of those? So just a reminder, we already require career prep as a graduation requirement. It already has financial literacy in, but obviously it didn't include all the components that are in the new law, but it's pretty close. If you open that up in your assembly, and I don't know if we got to look at it, it's just 3 things. But we need, if we add those, then it will completely, a lot of superintendents were worried we were going to add another course. So we're just modifying a course they already have to take, so they don't have to add a course.
And another thing, a lot of companies were approaching school districts trying to sell them financial literacy programs, and it's not really needed because they have what they need here as well. So by making this change, it will communicate to the school districts that they don't have to go out and look for something that they already have.
And is it not one of the laws that it starts immediately when it was written? I mean, there was no phasing it, it was like,
right,
here it is and implement.
Yes, and so there are some things that we're having to do in the background to make sure that the students in the 8th, that could potentially start that in the 8th grade would be meeting the law.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
So these standards as revised would take effect in career prep now?
Pending your vote next month.
Okay. Well, that's understood.
So yes, and so this is something that really, both of these are something that would greatly benefit students this year if you all choose to vote and approve that next month.
Great. Thank you for that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next item.
Okay, our Educator Preparation Institutional Report. Dr. Denise Peacock is with us. Now, this is a large report. I can't tell you for sure if it's in assembly or not. We went back and forth about loading it. We looked at loading it, and it may be in there, but it's very difficult to read in a digital format because this is it. And so, and it just, the print gets so small, unless you've got a really big screen. So we have a notebook for each of you, is that right?
They have individual folders. Everyone has the statewide report card, and then they have the ones that are relevant to their district.
Okay.
But after today, as long as everything is as it should be, then it will be posted on our website where it's normally housed. And so you will be able to go in and pull those reports for all of them.
Is it possible to get one?
Absolutely.
Oh, of course.
I would prefer.
I like paper too. I'm so glad someone else still likes paper.
Well,
They tease me about that a little here, but I really do like paper, so I understand.
Well, the screen is limited too. I have a laptop that I use,
But yes, we can definitely get those for you guys. So it's been a while since I've seen you all. Happy to be here to present the higher education report cards. As you know, this is something that we do annually, and it is a report that is going to show us with those that have finished either a Class B, which would be a bachelor's level program, or an alternative A. So someone who got a degree in something else and they returned back to school to do an educator preparation program at the master's level. And it's going to look at the various components of testing and how they did as far as passing those tests, whether they were successful after 1 attempt, 2 attempts, or 3 or more attempts. And then also, of course, we have our survey sheet at the end of that, which is where we are surveying our first and second year teachers and those that employ them. So it's the same format that you've seen in the past. So most of you should be familiar with that, but I'll just go through the information again and certainly take questions if you have them. Okay, and there's always a little bit of confusion here, so I like to put the dates in because people look at it and they have a hard time reining in the dates here. But remember, the dates are not the same for the survey and the testing in the report. The testing data will be, of course, for August 1 of 2021 through July 31 of 2022, where the surveys, of course, are in real time, so they would be for the previous year. So they would run August 1 of 2022 through July 31 of 2023. And of course, we have the statewide report, which is everyone, and then the individual institutional reports. Okay, so what is included in the report, or who is included? Individuals who completed, as I said, a Class B or an Alt-A program at an Alabama institution, and that "and" is very important, their professional educator certificate was issued during the time frame of the reporting period. So even if they finished during that time, but for whatever reason something wasn't in their file and their certificate did not get issued by that end date, then they roll to the next reporting period. And what is included in this particular notebook that we have here would be Praxis and EdTPA scores, because remember we're dealing with 21-22. And it will show the number and the percentages for those that passed on the first, the second, and 3 or more attempts. Now, I've gotten several questions about foundations of reading. That will be in next year's report because remember that became effective right after this reporting period. So look for that information to be in next year's report, not in the report that you're seeing here. All right, for the survey data, as we said, who's included? This is first and second year teachers who completed a Class B or an all-day program at an Alabama institution. And I think it's important here to remind ourselves this doesn't necessarily mean they just finished a program. They are a first or second year teacher, but they could have finished 2 or 3 years ago. So they can still fall into that category if this is in fact their first or second year teaching. And of course the employers of those first and second year teachers. And what will be included in the survey data will be the summary of the survey categories and percentages for the first and second year teachers, and then the summaries for their employers. And that's a good summary of what you're seeing in this large notebook. So tell me what questions you have. I know.
So where are their folders?
I don't know.
I'll bring them back after lunch. I do want to have a little conversation with you so you can see the numbers, so we may have to delay that till right after lunch. But, one of the real concerns with this, as we always have, is that some of our institutions, especially our smaller institutions, don't have 5 test takers. So I'm worried that, I shouldn't say I'm worried. It does bother me that there's some institutions we can't look into how their students are doing because they're going to have an asterisk. Because if there are fewer than 5 in a particular, now remember you put them all together, they may have, 50 students in their College of Ed, but they're in, some are in elementary, some are in math, some are in middle school with science, and so you're going to see a lot of asterisks in some of our small programs. It worries me because we don't know how those programs are doing. Now their numbers are accumulated up to the state data. Our big programs, Alabama or Auburn, they pretty much have no asterisks because most of their programs have at least 5 people. But that does worry me, and that's something Dr. Peacock, I've asked her about. And of course I realize we're under federal rules. We can't identify people, and so we get lower than 5, we can't. But we're going to try another way to try to get in to make sure that all of our institutions are performing where we need them to. The other thing is I always look, immediately the only thing I look at is how many passed it on the first attempt.
Right.
So I remind you that everything adds up to 100 here. And you'll feel a little bit of my K-12 bias because as you know in K-12, if we only reported the data for the students who were proficient, everybody would be proficient, which is what the colleges report. They only report, I've got a lot of friends out there, I'm just telling you, it's not their fault, but the testing data the tests are owned by the students. The students pay for the test, the students sit for the test, and the students have to release their data. And so if they don't pass, essentially it just goes away. It's just never, they have to take it a second time or third time. They don't get a teaching certificate. And in many of our institutions, they don't get a degree. Some institutions allow them to get a degree, like a general studies degree, but not a teaching degree. But they can't get a certificate without passing it. But we really don't know for sure that number of people who never pass the test. And so they never matriculate to get a teaching certificate. So what you're going to see is the number who passed on the first attempt, second attempt, and they took 3 or more attempts. But again, you add those up, there's not a fourth column that says, well, how many students in the program never passed? So we don't know that because, again, the students choose not to report that to us. And that students own the data. The students pay for it. It's their test. So I think the best measure is first attempt. Like, did 80% of your students pass on the first attempt, or did only 20% pass on the first attempt, and then they had to have remediation and tutoring to go back and take it again. Now, we certify them if they pass. It doesn't matter how many attempts it takes. But you will see, I mean, I do feel good. So if you've got your programs, yours now, and you just look at statewide data, I'm going to look at statewide bachelor's, not in ed praxis. I think it's the second. And on mine, it's kind of the second page. The first page are real numbers. The first page is just asterisks because it's kind of the key. It's just a key thing.
Mine fourth page.
Fourth page. So if you see there, these are our institutions all pulled together. So I just take elementary ed, multiple subjects mathematics. 755 people across the state took that test. 657 of them, or 87%, passed it on first attempt. Now that makes me feel pretty good. So that tells me that our programs, of the people who passed the test ultimately, the vast majority passed it, 87% passed it just on the first attempt. You see another 55 or 77% passed it on the next attempt. And then another 43, it took 3 attempts or more. And again, to reiterate what I've already said, if there were a fourth column that said, and here's the ones who never passed it, my suspicion is that'd be a very low number. And I think it's a very low number because once you've paid for 4 years of college, you're probably going to continue to take the test until you pass it. So it's really, that's a pretty good number there. That tells me only 6% of our students struggle and cannot pass the test on the first or second attempt. And are there another 4% or 3% or something who just never pass and never teach? Maybe, but good for us. That's the whole point in having a bar for for people to have to jump over. It'll be when you look down. I'm also going to take, if you go on this same page. So we do mathematics, science, social studies. I'm told. Dr. Peacock's going. I'll mess it all up and then she can fix it. But so you see how there were 755 that took it, but then there were 753 that took science, and part of that could be that some of them could have passed science on the first attempt in the prior year, and so then this year there are fewer science takers than math takers because a couple of them didn't have to take both because they'd already passed the science section. So don't be too alarmed by that.
You did well, Doctor.
Thank you very much. I'm trying. You guys do a good job trying to teach.
Dr. Mackey, can you,
Yes,
Dr. Peacock, speak to the mathematics? 31 took it on the first time, 52% passed.
Yeah.
Apparently 6 more people passed, and then 9 more people passed.
So those are high school. So when you get down to the starting with PLA, 88, and then languages other than English, fewer than 5 in the whole state. So that tells us world languages or programs don't have a lot of enrollees, I would say. And then Dr. Reynolds asked about, so mathematics, I think you've got it, 31 people took it, so we had 31 candidates statewide, and half of them, only 52%, passed it on the first attempt. So we've had that discussion often, that's a struggle. Is that right?
It is, Dr. Mackey, and the only information I can give you on that is what I hear from the field when I'm taking phone calls from, people that are struggling with this. And so often the phone call is the same, I'm teaching high school math, but I'm really just teaching algebra and geometry, but my school system wants me to have this secondary certificate so I can teach everything, but I'm never gonna teach calculus. I'm never gonna teach statistics, I don't want to, why do I have to do that to get this certificate? Well, the answer is very simple, if that is the pathway that you're going, quote unquote, secondary mathematics, we are certifying you here in the state that you are qualified to teach any of those things. And so if all of a sudden in the middle of the year, your principal has to call you up and place you in a calculus class, you're qualified to do that. And so that is the best explanation I can give you on why that number is lower. Because quite often we have very gifted math teachers, but they're just not prepared or have interest in teaching those higher level mathematics classes, but maybe they're phenomenal algebra, geometry, algebra 2 type teachers. And so I think this is an area that we've always struggled with that area, and I think that's the reason, and that probably will be an area that we continue to work in.
So are we advising those school systems to not do this to teachers? Because what reflects on any individual who fails an exam, it is both numerical negative on your record plus a psychological impact on you for not achieving. So if you consistently get this response and echo this response, should we not be communicating to our administrators, don't do this? If it's inappropriate and these teachers are teaching these things, why are we perpetuating this implementation or identification of these individuals as failing the practice? It's not good for our record, it's not good for their record, and it's really irrelevant in what we're doing to students.
Right, well, and that's a tough question, Dr. Reynolds, and the reason is because, of course, when they go into a program, they make their own decision on the program that they want to go in. If I'm a young person and I'm thinking I want to be a math teacher, and I want to have the greatest opportunity at getting a job as a math teacher, well, then I want to do that 612 certification for mathematics that's going to open a lot of doors for me, as opposed to just doing middle school mathematics or getting that certification with algebra or geometry. So ultimately the decision, Dr. Reynolds, is the student's decision on the program that they elect to go into, because they want to open those doors. I think sometimes when they get into those situations, then they think, gosh, maybe I should have done middle school math, or my love is really with algebra. And of course, they always have the opportunity, if they're with a college and they want to make a change and move to a different program, they can. Some do and some don't, but it's just a matter of, sometimes once you get in and you're far enough in, then you don't want to turn back. And so you just continue to persevere with it. But you are correct with that, Dr. Reynolds. We don't want to lose those solid algebra and geometry teachers because of this test. And so they do have options within the College of Education if they do want to make changes. But
remember that some of these could have been people who wanted the science and math there. Could have been people who wanted a Teams contract too. We did have a number of those across the state.
Yes.
Who had a social studies teacher. That's an option to them. They can just take the math or science practice, and if they pass it, they can apply for those contracts. And we had dozens of people across the state who did that. Now remember, all these passed, so they didn't pass on only 52% on first attempt, but then eventually several more passed. Some on the third or more attempt, and that is an issue, but they did pass the practices. They made the actual cut score. I also want to, if you turn one more page, I want to draw your attention to teaching reading.
If I ask that it's crossed 16 and 6 and 9, even as a mathematician, that totals 31, right? So as Dr. Mackey presented, and I was going to bring it up, if you didn't, all those 31, according, if they were the same individuals, passed practice after 3 attempts.
Correct, yes. The total test takers here will equal the numbers because ultimately they did pass and they were given a certificate. You are correct, Dr. Reynolds.
Now, these are the individuals that are doing the alternative certificates.
They are either doing a Class B. Now, the list that you're looking at here, if you look up at the top, we're looking at bachelor's. So these are Class B students only. So this is their initial degree from an educator preparation program.
Okay.
Deeper in the report, you'll have the Alt A, which would be those that got a bachelor's in something else. They decided they wanted to come back and become a teacher, so they went through that master's level program.
But where they could be, if, let's say they have only a bachelor's in social studies, and they want to also add English language arts or science, math or whatever to their certificate. They want to add health. Then they would take Class B, the Class B practice, so they would show up. Most of these are obviously going to be college students taking the program, but those students would come in there too, or those teachers, if they're sitting for the test. They won't show up in individual institution reports, right? Because they're not enrolled in an institution.
This report actually is just those that were enrolled in the state of Freedom.
Oh, in the
only.
institution.
Yes,
Okay.
yes. And that's Dr. Mackey is correct. We do a large number of certifications for people once they have a certificate in one area and they feel led to move into another area, particularly with teams. He's right. You know, we get lots of people that maybe I have an interest in science and now I have an incentive to go back and to do that. So we do lots of additions to certificates based on people that are already certified that want to move into other areas, which is a great thing.
But they're not on this report.
They are not on that
My
report, that is
apologies for
correct.
that. I misunderstood. Sorry about that.
That's okay.
Okay, I do want to look at if you look at the second page, teaching of reading, or the next page. So, realize that is the test that we will be replacing with the foundations of reading next year.
Correct.
So teaching of reading, 754 students took it. 81% passed on the first attempt, but you voted to go away from this test, and we have already replaced it with foundations of reading, and that will be on next year's report. So this test will go away.
I think I'm more interested in the responses of the first and second year teachers and those that are employing them. Were there any big global takeaways from the responses to your questions in that survey that you would like to share with the board?
I'm going to defer to Dr. Aronica on that part because that is definitely her area.
Dr. Patience Aronica, who does the survey part for us.
She's my partner in crime.
Disclaimer, I did not do. Good morning. Good morning. Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am. So in comparing the answers that our first and second year teachers in answering the survey and those that are employing them, were there any big takeaways for you where there were that, you know, the teachers were thinking one thing and the principals are thinking something very different? Can you share any information just globally? You don't have to, it doesn't have to be real deep in the weeds.
It continues because it's a perception survey, and the data is that it continues to be where the teachers are feeling more and more comfortable with their ability to teach in our schools. And the principals, we did not have a lot of emerging or not ready teachers from the principal's perception. So
that's improving.
There is an improvement.
Board members, any other questions?
So may I ask so Ms. Bell asked for a copy. Who wants the full gigantic notebook? Because so that Dr. Peacock can get those printed for her. I'm glad to do it, but it's just better to know how many she's going to print, and then It will go on the website, but it
Yes.
is, yeah.
That's correct. I'll get that email out this afternoon and as fast as they can get that.
If you want a hard copy too, I mean, we've got a few copies around, but if you want a hard copy to take with you, we'll make it. Be glad to. You don't have to tell me now, but we'll get it. We'll be glad to do it.
And you don't have to put it in a binder, just, I have,
Just make
but I do read it.
too.
We're glad to do it.
Yes.
Pursuant to that employer-teacher response, it's pretty glaring when you look at the last page in this first section.
Are you on the statewide?
Yes.
Okay.
If you just look at the colors, just purple on one column of the employees and purple on the teachers, there is a rather dramatic difference. Dramatic difference in every category. And if you look at practice in an ethical manner, 17 versus 61 negative, those sometimes are odd. Can you help me understand why that dichotomy exists? It's almost universal. It's almost like we're looking at a different part of the same animal.
Perceptions are different.
Perceptions
are different.
It's almost,
it's all-
Okay, so what we continue to have an issue with is the difference between how individuals see themselves and how they are viewed by their employer. Two things I want to point out. If you look at the response rate, still we are continuing to work on that because with the completers as well as with the employers, we don't have the response rate that we would like to have. Our response rate, particularly from the employers, is much lower than we would like. So is that perception possibly skewed, Dr. Reynolds? Absolutely, because we did not have enough of the employers to actually rate the employees to say that this is really how they consider them and their performance. The other thing is that, when you start looking at how they are viewed, it's that 360-degree window with them looking at themselves, having been viewed by their employers, and also if we could bring in that third lens, and how would those that they are serving, those P through 12 students, view their performance in terms of their ability to prepare them. Unfortunately, we weren't able to look at that third dynamic, but as we continue, we're looking at some revisions to the report card for the next time, so that we can ensure that what we're providing has a more holistic appearance to it.
So I interpret from your response that the employers are less compliant with the responses than the teachers,
Unfortunately, you are correct.
Which doesn't speak very highly for my profession as a administrator in education.
You see, sometimes the employees
Thank you for that comment. And maybe we need to include the percentage responses in our future reports to help us understand, because response data, and I agree with, if that's what happened, that skews everything, and that means we've got some very non-responsive and non-compliant employers.
Yes, in this report, sir, we have the end count for both the teachers and their employers. And one of the things that Dr. Hampton and I discussed is the fact that an employer, let's say a principal, has 10 new teachers, and they are expected by the survey to complete surveys for each of those 10 new teachers. And sometimes that can prevent them.
They just don't want to do it, right?
They don't want to do all 10.
Maybe we need to motivate them in some way.
They don't want to do all 10, they want to do one. So that's why the employer.
And it's the principal that does this, right?
It's a principal.
I'm certain if
yes.
I were a superintendent, I want to know my principal who didn't carry out their
The
responsibility.
principal or the assistant principal, whoever is able to evaluate the teacher.
Dr. Reynolds, and you can see the numbers, I don't know if you noticed that on the two individual reports before they're side by side, it does have the number of respondents on those two, if that helps.
I do read your data.
Well, we do see that our teachers have a sense of self-efficacy, don't we?
Well, and we need that.
It does, and that's, I mean, they're showing up and they believe in themselves, so they will more than likely get to where we want them to.
We need them to believe in themselves.
But when you look at the employer response, even though we may not have the numbers that we desire, it's encouraging to see that a larger portion of the principals that did respond said that the teachers were effective. And so that speaks volumes. And this is an improvement from what we had last year.
Yes.
Was there any kind of a pattern as far as the schools? I know that some schools request that the principals do more than other school principals, perhaps, and depending on the size of the school, not to minimize the significance or the need. But I do think that so often we forget how much they have on their list, how many things, check off every day even. And so perhaps that's something we could emphasize when a new principal is hired or when they're reminded, local school boards remind principal, this is your job description. Perhaps they need that added on. I think sometimes we forget that we have to provide a job description as well as emphasize part of that job description. And some may see that as something that's way down here as a priority set by their local board or superintendent. So perhaps that's one way we can encourage the principals or the administrators, whether it's an assistant principal who does that. Not to minimize the significance or the need, but I think that's something we tend to forget because they have to make sure somebody's covering buses or, you know the list.
It would be very easy to be pushed down the list.
Sure.
And I'm sure, and as Dr. Veronica said, if I'm an administrator and I have one new teacher, I can find 5 minutes and sit down and do it. But if I've hired 10 new teachers that year, and so I'm doing a survey on each of those, and I'm having to think through those questions, I may be more likely to push that down on my list.
And that seems to be the norm this year. These days we are looking for new teachers, and so that seems to be the norm as we look at this.
Absolutely right.
Well, thank you for this information. We appreciate it so much. We're gonna be moving on to the summer impact data.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
So, we do, Ms. Short, ready? You wanna go ahead and try and do this before lunch break?
Yes, if
You
that's
do?
okay.
That's fine.
Is that okay?
It is.
Okay. There should be a PowerPoint that's
Coming
coming
up.
up. I believe y'all got, information in your format. Technology's just not being sweet to me today, is it?
Didn't they say they had a storm last night that impacted?
I wouldn't be surprised if it was kind of.
Really bad.
That's the one I had today. Is that the last part? That's the one I got.
So under assembly, if you've got assembly, I don't know,
It's on the second.
yes, very green, kind of a teal look on it. So,
Mine did.
what can I do, Charles, to pull it up? I've got it right.
Email it to me.
It's slowly coming up.
It says it's loading, but it hasn't.
It's loading, that's what mine is. It's up now. It's up. I think you are.
It's just that page.
There it is.
It's just that blank.
It just came up. It took a
Go to the
while.
second one. There's two of them. Go to the second one.
I'm gonna read
I think
it.
it's just taking a minute.
That's what come to mind, but just sideways.
Go back to the other page.
Y'all email it to me.
That's the summer impact, and that's the summer reading thing.
Isn't that where we're going?
Number
It's gonna look
6
like a
today.
PowerPoint that says, Alabama summer reading camp data.
6 today.
Well, I have a chair. There we go. Thank you, Miss Jackson.
You're very welcome, because I did the same thing. So I was just a little ahead of you. So this is a collection of the data that we take from individual schools. It's self-reported data during their summer reading camp time. Now, it's important to note that as we're going over this data, we're using old-fashioned processes for them to submit their information, but for future data, we now have this information in PowerSchool, so we'll be able to collect that data ongoing in a little different capacity. But the first slide, are all of you able to see the slide?
We see it.
Information. The first slide goes over the enrollment for summer reading camp. You can see how the enrollment in first grade amps up quite a bit. Perfect. Thank you so much. In first grade amps up quite a bit, which we would expect that kindergarten would be a lower grade for enrollment into summer reading camp. And then our second and third grade are very close in that enrollment number. So those are the ones that attended the camp. And then as you move on to the third slide, you see the average daily attendance level. And that looks really suspicious when they're all the same.
Yeah, that's what I
But
was
truly, that is the data that they have for 75% attendance, which I think bodes well for us. Certainly, we want them much higher than 75%. But one of the things that our information that we'll be gathering in the future and Power School will do is we will have a range of participation for each individual student. So we'll be able to look at individual students and how often they're coming to summer reading camp. So the ones that were 75% to 100%, we're going to be able to see that. The ones that are coming less than 50% of the time, we're going to be able to see that they're not capitalizing on the summer reading camp as we should.
But Bonnie, when the principals are at their local school and they see, just say they come up with 75%, I'm just gonna say, do they not investigate to find out what are the barriers of why the kidlets aren't coming?
And you know that varies from school to school as to the depth that they're investigating that, but yes, that is definitely.
Because that's, I mean, it could be something, I think we talked one time about a bus or something, and a ditch or something, remember? But I mean, some of these might be fixable, but, I mean, 75% is better than 50, but it sure would be nice to get it up in the 80s and 85.
And I do anticipate that in future year, as we continue with this program, I do think we're gonna see higher attendance. The stakes are higher for our third graders.
Yes.
And so I think that that in itself is going to end up impacting our attendance. And then if you move to the third slide, and if you talk to anybody who does research on summer reading camp, summer learning, the goal is to hit 0 to reduce the summer slide. And you can see that here we have.
I'm sorry, Bonnie, just a moment.
Hold on.
Whoever's device is speaking, can you silence that device?
I'm listening to a
Yes,
message.
okay.
He's listening to a message.
Okay, well, please silence the device.
Okay.
Go ahead, Bonnie.
And then on the
I'm
last.
sorry, that was a VA medical emergency I had to respond to.
And then on the last slide, we have the average growth by grade level. And kindergarten growth is the highest. Third grade growth is the lowest. I think that's an aspect that I think we will see that trend continue, to be honest with you, because I think as they get further up to the grades, it's harder to make that, to close that gap because they've gotten further behind.
I'm sorry, when you first started, you said that you look at 0 is, what was that statement? I'm sorry, I didn't hear it.
0%
In reference to this growth
in
here.
relation to the growth.
Okay.
If we're at 0%, we're great, because the goal is to reduce the summer slide.
Okay.
We don't want to see them go down.
Right, okay.
But of course, I want growth,
Yes,
because we want to
okay.
be able to see our students grow. So the fact that we've got growth on all of these grades is very encouraging.
Okay, I'm
With
sorry.
regard to the work that we're doing during those 60 hours that are required per the law.
Thank you.
This is not only summer reading camp, but we also merged with the math. And so these students who are coming for this, in every case that I know about, are also having math
So that was
opportunities that are
both.
taking place in the school. This is specifically the reading data,
Oh, okay.
but because of the way we've set up these programs, math is also taking place during these programs.
So would the growth be higher if we totally focused on reading?
This is all reading. This 60 hours is all reading. They have to have 60 hours of reading, intervention, and instruction per the law.
And how much
Anything that is
math
math
do you
has to be above that. So your K-3
Okay.
students do not have as much math. It is your 4th and 5th grade students that are having the majority of the math.
Okay. So if we wanted to see how many students this was in kindergarten, we'd just do the percentage of 5677.
I'm gonna agree with you on that. Might need to see that on a piece of paper. I am reading and literacy. I'm gonna
Well,
agree
if it
with you on
says
that.
If it says
75% of that
6.4%,
number. Yes, ma'am.
then
She didn't wanna go into the statistical part.
Yeah.
So does that mean 5.44% of first graders showed growth?
Showed growth. No, that means that we
That
saw
on the average
5.44%
growth was
growth.
5.44%.
Correct. Correct.
So it's not the
Across the
student,
board.
it's how much.
Right,
Yes.
it's not students, it's how much.
It's the average of how much growth was seen across the board of all of the students.
Some grew at a greater level than others,
Yes.
so this is just the average.
And so the schools where we did not see the higher growth, that is where our regionals step in and we say, okay, so what are we seeing there barrier-wise that may be contributing for not as much growth? This is our baseline that we're seeing for our state, and so we can use that to help better support our districts and planning now for next year.
Do you have it broken down where we can actually receive a copy of it broken down?
I do.
By regions and districts, because I think that would be telling as well.
Mhm.
And we can sort of perhaps guess based on other, data, but I would like to have that as well.
I do have that information for you.
I know I have two school systems that have told me that they had 100%, well, you told us that, 100%. And then another district in that same county had 98%. So that's student numbers.
Is that attendance?
That's
Talking about
student
on the
numbers.
98% of
On the
what?
ACAP.
So, and think about that, because the ACAP is not the only measure that can provide an opportunity for a student to have summer reading camp. Because it is, if they're showing that consistent deficiency, they get invited to summer reading camp. They may have a consistent deficiency, but they were able to, throughout the year, make enough gains to be able to, do well on the ACAP. So they might still have that opportunity to shore up, even if they, were a student who did not pass that.
So if-
pass the ACAP.
If 100% is 45 students spread out over the grade level, then that might not be 45 low-level ACAP students. Is that what you're telling me?
Correct. It's majority.
Don't be
there.
close, but.
It's majority gonna be there. But we can start inviting children to summer reading camp today, based on the knowledge we have with our early year screeners.
Do you mind getting that report out to the board? That would
I've
be
already
great.
sent that to Miss Nora and Miss Martin, and so we'll get that to you.
Okay, I would like to see as well. I've had a couple superintendents report very low attendance. And so I've been, wondering how we can support our parents getting those children to the school in the summer, because that's their best chance of proceeding on. And so I'm disappointed that we've had low attendance in a couple of school districts inside District 2 that I know of, so I would like to.
Transportation sometimes is the reason.
Right,
And so
right.
the district
But
is
if they're
offering that.
providing buses and they're still not getting them on the bus
Right.
to go to school, then that's an issue.
Yes,
So, but we would appreciate that report. Thank you for bringing that up.
One other question. I don't usually ask this many questions, but one other question. We had a number of students who had not scored proficient. Now, how many students do we have that have scored proficient after the summer reading came?
The number did increase. I don't have that right in front of me, but we did have a significant number of students that increased, based on the supplemental test that they took after summer reading.
Will we get that in the report
I'd
that
like
you
to
sent
see
me?
that.
Ms. Martin is
Absolutely.
saying yes, so absolutely.
Well, Ms. Martin-
Any data, I'm getting approval from somebody else before I send it out, any
You
data.
sure?
Yes, sir.
Since we modified proficiency and sufficiency scores, are we gonna implement any phase to look at those students who fell in that category between 1 or 2 standard error of,
The deviation.
Yes.
Um,
because those are the students that are gonna pass.
Well-
According to the board resolution, that fall in the grade category about, so where some of us think they are proficient to read and move on or not. So in order for the board to make the decision in this next coming year, about the cut score, are we gonna maintain some analysis of those that fall in those areas of standard error of measurement? And
It's gonna be important that we look at all of our
it's very
kids.
important to me that you present that data to us, because if those students are passing on and are in the gray area, are those students not gonna bother to go because they're gonna pass anyway? Or are we gonna encourage those students in saying, you're sufficient, but not necessarily in terms that have come to proficient?
I think we need to be encouraging anybody that does not have the skills
So you're gonna develop
that
a
are
program to
needed
do
there.
that? Since you feel that, are you gonna do something?
I think this is something that we currently have in place with
Good.
our reading deficiencies and the early years assessments, which I think is our primary basis of inviting students to summer reading camp. So definitely, those students need to continue to be invited.
Even
the
more
law.
inviting, even,
Per the law.
yeah, more than invited, some sort of encouragement. You need to go, not, it's nice, because I'd rather play softball or something this summer.
I want them to play softball, but I also want to be at summer.
I understand.
camp. We want all of it, and I want our summer reading camp programs to have opportunities inside them that are beyond just reading. We need our 60 hours of instruction and intervention, but then we're also working toward those programs being more than just that time of them getting academic, but addressing all students. So
Thank
we
you
can't
very much.
compromise our 60 hours though. I don't
I'm
want
not
to bend on
compromising.
that.
I know what we're gonna face when we face that proficiency, sufficiency, and cut score data next year. And that's why we only extended it for 1 year instead of 2, because some of us wanna see what happens in the intervention.
Yes, sir.
All right, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Board members, we're gonna break now for lunch and we'll return in 45 minutes. Thank you.
It's very cold. I will say that. It's very cold. That's why I like to come back. Yeah. My mom has something like that, but it's for some reason,
Everybody's
Thank you for the tomatoes. I love them. I've been there.
very
Thank you.
Here's my real rectangle.
Okay. So, you'll see, we're really close, y'all, to the end. I'm going to talk a little bit about what's coming up, though. So, items 6, 7, 8, I think 9 and 10 are all blue ribbon schools. They should be with us in November. As you remember, it's typically a problem getting them here because usually the board meeting overlaps with when they have to go to Washington. Well, it doesn't this year. So they're going to be in Washington the week before. So we think they will all be able to come. And because of that, some years we've had to delay it till January or something, but they should be here. They're kind of spread out across the state. I don't know if you've been able to talk to your principals or superintendents, but they're all really excited about going to Washington, and then they'll be here. Now, when they go to Washington, I think they can only take 3 people in a delegation. It's usually the superintendent, principal, and 1 teacher or something like that. So we may, we invite however many want to come. So maybe we'll have a big group. So that'll be a big thing for celebration in November. The meeting is the day before Veterans Day. The day before the Veterans Day holiday. Dr. Reynolds will catch me. Veterans Day is on a Saturday this year, so the holiday will be on Friday. So our meeting will be on Thursday. I just point that out because I know a lot of people have things going on around the holiday, and we'll be that Thursday before. So those are those 5 schools. Any questions on our blue ribbon schools or anything about those? So the A+ College Ready Schools of Excellence. I don't know who's in here may be a professional on that. We got a kind of a slow group. So if you look at the resolution, here's what these are the schools that do College Ready, so they do advanced placement. And they are either schools of distinction or schools of excellence. And I want to tell you, I'm not sure the difference between the two, but it has to do with they're recognized for the number of students who test and the number of students who pass the AP test. So our AP report just came out. So what we plan next month in the work session to go through kind of the advanced placement report for the state and just kind of show you where we are, where the growth is, how our students did, and we may put ACT in with that same thing. Just kind of these are our 2 kind of high school tests that are not, that students take. Not all of them obviously take the AP, but a lot of students do. And so we'll just show you that whole piece. So I don't know if you have any questions on that. You see the list of schools. They're fairly well, the first list is longer. They're fairly well separated across the state. Sean Stevens' group puts all this together. I know he was with us this morning, but if you got any questions, you're welcome to ask. I'll answer the best I can. So we'll probably have representatives from all of those schools too at the November meeting. So I think there'll be a pretty good group here. Okay, and then there are no questions on that. The last thing is my updates and other business. And there are a few things I want to talk about. I'm sure y'all may have some things you want to question about too. But so first is in November, the work session. We will, in addition to looking at those higher ed pieces, we will have the science course of study. Dr. Cove came back in the summer and talked to us about the science course of study, the development. We talked just a little bit about it last month. But it is very close to being ready now. So his plan is to bring it at the November meeting with the hope that you could approve it in December, and then we would start the textbooks for the science in January, or right after the first year, I think in January. So that'll be moving on. Just realize that's coming, so we'll get it to you ahead of time. It is not quite tied up with a bow on top yet, so it's not quite ready, but they're close to having the special study ready. We will also have your list for social studies. So still, I don't know, Ms. Bell asked a question about that. I don't know who've also been nominated, but we'll have, and then of course, in addition to the nominees that y'all approve, a lot of the ones that actually have come to us have been folks who are outside education, but want appointments from the governor for the business side, business community side. So we've just shifted all those over there. Those don't come until a little later usually. We usually don't get those folks until the spring. But that'll be coming too. So that's two big things that relate to our courses of study that are coming up in the next couple of months. And so even though there's nothing to discuss on today, I just felt like it was good to get that ahead of that. The library, I want to go back to the library for a minute. So you saw, I know most of you saw, because I got some messages from you, that we did send out the library memo last week. I talked to superintendents about that yesterday, the importance of them having a challenge policy in place. And it went well. I did not have any questions about that. AASD does have that as a part of their model policy, so anybody who's a member of the AASD model policy pipeline gets that policy. Not all boards do join that, but most of them do. So it appears that that's all well and good. We've not really heard any issues. There is one school district that has launched their own sort of internal audit. They're just going through all of their elementary libraries and evaluating their collections to see if they feel like they have anything, not that parents are challenging it, but anything they wanted to kind of basically challenge from their own administration, just to check. It's one of our very large systems with a lot of elementary schools. So they are doing that now. I mentioned that to superintendents that was an option. They could all want to do that, just go through and look at their collections, especially if they have really big programs.
Dr. Mackey?
Yes.
I talked with a librarian, elementary librarian in my district, and I asked her if she had been receiving any materials that she thought should not be put out. And she said yes. And I said, where are they coming from? And she said, book companies. Book companies just send them as samples. She said, years ago, I could just put them on the shelf without reading them. And she said, now I sit down and read every book before I put it out, and I make the determination whether or not this would be accepted in this community. So.
And that's really hard.
Yes, to read every one, She told me about a book that had a unicorn on it that she put out because it was such a cute little picture, and she thought it was a book about unicorns. And girls love unicorns. And then she found out later it was definitely not about unicorns. So she took it down.
So companies are giving these books to.
Book companies have always sent samples out, right?
No, well,
yes.
Not when I was librarian, but of course I'm 100.
No, you're not. And so they come unsolicited.
Okay.
Well,
we didn't used to get that.
And then those book sales, the fundraisers,
Yeah,
they'll send all sorts of
fair.
freebies too, and a
Yeah.
lot of those are just really, my granddaughters were gonna buy some, and I thought, oh, thank you, I want this one. We just handled it without going into any details. It was beyond anything that we handled. But the bottom line is that that's how it's sort of trickling in because of trust for these groups, I think.
Yes, because these book companies have already been sending books for many years.
Yes.
That were fine.
And then the parents would take children, and you'd buy you'd have your limit, and the little children could buy whatever they wanted to. But you
And
can't
they still
do
do
that.
but maybe.
More carefully.
Maybe we're careful with
Yeah.
Dr. Mackey, since every school board in the state of Alabama is required to have board training with the Alabama Association of School Boards, do you think that we could ask the executive director and her board if this one particular policy could be shared through Jane, their attorney, to every school district, even if they have not paid for the policy pipeline, just as follow-up support to this issue? I would think that one policy, because they're paying for that membership, I would just maybe ask and see if they could make an exception on this one policy, because it seems to be a topic that people are discussing, if that policy could be shared. And then we've done all that we can do to help those local boards adopt the recommended policy by AASB.
I'll check on that, be glad to. She did, I will say yesterday, when I was speaking to the superintendent, she was in the room, and I said if anybody, I think should be very open to that, because I said, I'm sure if you have any questions about this policy, that AASB would be glad to help you, and she did a big thumbs up, so I think they would be glad to.
Yeah, I would just say for a district that may not have the funds to pay for the pipeline for whatever reason, doesn't have the opportunity to have that policy available.
That's great. I've got it down. Anything else on that? I want to talk about, I want to talk about topics that could be controversial. I want to talk a little bit about school counseling and the counseling plan too. So, let me give you a little history, and y'all, some of you are going to say, well, we've already heard this, because we did in 2022, I think Mr. Stevens put all this together, Sean Stevens, I think he came and presented it. So the current counseling guidelines are those approved by the board in 2003. That's been a question in the last month, because some people said, well, no, I know that they've been approved since then. No. They go back, there was one approved in 79, and then 84, 86, 96, and 2003. Now, there was a proposal in 2014, but it never came to a board vote. And that is one that has circulated with some controversial things, but I think that's one reason. I wasn't in this chair at the time, but Ms. Bell was on board. I think it's one reason it never came to a vote. So there were some concerns about it. So the current policy is to 2003. It is on our website. Now, some local districts have their own counseling policy that is modeled maybe more after other resources they've got. They still have to meet ours as a minimum standard. That's the one approved by the board, but they can obviously add to it if they want to. And so there's been some confusion about the difference between local school board policies or maybe procedures they've adopted versus the state guidance and counseling manual. So there's also been a question, a couple of board members have asked me, well, could we revisit it again? And of course we could, as we could revisit the library. In 24, we can look at that. I wouldn't want to do both of those at the same time. Remember, we're kind of doubled up now because we're doing science and social studies back to back. We're doing science textbooks while we're doing social studies. And those are all the same people. You know, there's our instructional services section that Sean Stevens leads. There's I don't know how many people are down there. There's 9 or 10 of them, but they're also providing technical assistance, doing monitoring. So I wouldn't want to say we're going to redo the social studies standards, the guidance and counseling, the library, all at the same exact time. But we could pace those out if the board wanted to, and we certainly could work on updating libraries and counseling plans. One of the things that I would, yes, ma'am.
I was just going to ask him, can we get the copy? I know I would have more knowledge of it just because, maybe a bit, but if we could have the current policy that's actually on the books, because I've had to correct a lot of people in my district and say, you know, this is the case, this is what
That would be very good.
But also, if we don't need to change it, if we can refine it so that the locals actually do what they're supposed to do, because we can't be the book police from the state level.
Right.
But we can reinforce it and tell people how to do it and go through the process. And if we have locals that actually have a plan, because that was the idea. Everybody wants more local control. But we have certain guidelines and requirements that they have to meet in both areas. And if you don't see any reason to readdress it, we just need to have knowledge of what's in there. And so do the locals if they're going to be the ones who deal with it.
Dr. Mack,
Yeah, and maybe send it.
I agree with what you're saying, but the issue that had come up last year when Dr. Chestnut and I went to their meeting, the counselors were concerned that there had not been anything given to them for guidance since 2003. And that's what was shared with us. So if you're
That's
gonna
it.
put it out to the locals, I just think the counselors need to be aware of that, because that's what they told us was a concern, that they had not had anything updated, so they were going along with what they had, but also implementing other things. So if there's a framework or something, that will be helpful, in line with what you're saying.
And the same thing with libraries.
Right.
That one hasn't been updated either.
Well, and it's not necessarily updating as much as getting the information out, because sometimes when you update, you forget something, you leave it behind, but if it's working, because once and I said it last time, once I've referred someone to go through the process and they know the process, then they're happy and it's taken care of and the locals can deal with it, like, you know, your friend who had the books, but it's mainly knowledge. And the same thing with the counseling. If the counselors, they have the flexibility to add to, so other than adding a prohibition
or whatever,
you know,
but we just need to say that. I think the concern was nothing had been said as to what needs to have been done over 19 years
why
ago.
we need to just inform.
Exactly.
Because sometimes when you mess it up more than, you know, if you have something in place that's
Communicate
working.
what we're expecting.
And you think about all of the turnovers, the changes, assignments, all those things. It's not a bad idea to do that anyway with a lot of the things that we have on the books.
And I think that most schools hire certified counselors. Now that we have flexibility through the legislature to our administrators, schools can flex that library media unit, and they don't even have to have a library media person in the school. I've been one of those people. I can assure you, if someone had come into my library, had no knowledge of anything, they could mess it up in about 5 days. So it would be good if we had a set of guidelines that we've looked at, that the librarians have looked at, and say these are relevant.
And we have them, and that's it, we have them.
But they're not current.
Well, they're not that out of date either, and that's where I think it'd be good to have those for all of us to look at. There was a reason why we didn't move forward with it, and it wasn't because of trying to ignore the potential for controversy. It was mainly because once we started discussing it, we realized that schools in my district are very different from schools in your district, even though they're probably more similar because I know a lot of what your district involves, because it used to be part of my district at one time. But all of that is to say, that was part of that discussion, is that.
You're talking about recently.
When I'm talking about just every time it's been brought up, because it's been brought up over the years and we have this in place. The problem is that it's like turnover at the local level if you don't inform board members. If you don't know what's in place, you just don't know. And so that's where it would be helpful to all of us. And if we do need to add, but I think if we could get a copy of those, I think that would be
They're
very
on the
helpful.
website, I'm sure.
They are, they're on the website. Be glad to
And they
send
are,
those
but I
again.
think it's better.
So we can, if that's something we want to tweak, I'm kind of hearing, not maybe completely redo them, but just look and see if they need to be updated. Again, we can do that. I would rather we go through a process where the board appoint a committee of folks to do that. And we could, but just so think about it, what if we say between now and the first of the year, what process we would want to do? If we want to do something, in the meantime, we'll share out the current ones. They are on the website. I do hear, not a lot, but I do hear some concerns. I talked to a school counselor recently. I know y'all have heard from some, and that they feel like there may be some gaps that have not, that some things need to be updated. One of the big concerns has been, to be honest, is like with the library document, a lot of things just referred to in the proposed one, the board didn't vote on. I never brought to you that because it had a lot of deferred things, basically. It said, if you want to learn how to build a so-and-so and so-and-so, just go to the American Association and they'll show you how to do it. And what we came back and said, let's not do that. If we want to show people how to build a collection around a topic or something, then let's say that. let's not defer everything. And so I think that would be one thing, is that had we take what we have, and not saying there's some really good things out there from some national associations. We're all members of national associations, though. Nobody agrees with everything your national association puts out there. So we want to be cautious that the minimum standards that we as a board adopt, you as a board adopt, that we know what they are. And this is why that's important, because I've experienced this now 2 or 3 times in my years as state superintendent, where the board approved or the department approved or whatever some national guidelines, and we had a link to those guidelines and they were fine, and then that national organization changed the guidelines and we didn't know they had changed it, and then they no longer were what we wanted to push out.
Castle is the example
so-
that you hear negative things about, and if you follow the link, there's a good reason.
So we want to be careful, I think, that we don't.
Castle, CASEL
Yes,
is the
yes,
organization that keeps coming up, but we don't,
Yeah, we don't use their
No.
stuff, but different organizations have changed things through the years, and we've got some in-state organizations that they've completely changed their mission, their content, and they don't necessarily come back to us and say, oh, we're changing everything about our content, our website, y'all still want to link to us. So even in the age of links and Google and all that, I think we just want to be cautious about saying, here are our minimum standards, but not it just, having a bunch of links. But we're glad to work on either and or both as just tweaks and updates. Let me send you what the most current for now. Another thing that has come up that I wanted to.
Before you change,
Yes.
I remember this whole process. When it came to the work session, it was on the agenda and then it disappeared. And I don't know what, I know that decision was made by someone else.
I think it's
That decision.
That was library.
Right, that was library, yeah. The decision was made by me because they came and presented at the work session. And we had no questions from board members, and we had no questions in the intervening weeks. But then during that time in between, we got a chance to kind of dig deeper into and look at some things and felt like we want to pull this back and then let's re-look at it. And then there were changes. There were changes in the librarians that worked on it. Some of them moved on to other jobs, and so we just left it where it is. As Ms. Bell said, we just left the ones we had in place weren't bad, so we just left them. The question now is, they're not bad, but are they up to date?
So we're going to examine the 203 applicability or need to change back to the librarian.
You're talking about the counseling?
Counseling.
There's two different
Counseling,
things.
I'm sorry. Counseling.
Well, we need to look at.
Yeah, we can look at that.
And the library standards are 20 years old. Well,
Yeah.
Yes, that's what I was.
Schools don't have hard copy books in their libraries anymore. And there's not a requirement anymore to have 10 books per student. But you have to have those resources. So I think we definitely need
You don't even have a card catalog anymore.
You do, it's just computerized.
So we'll look at both of those. Another thing I want to let you know that we're working on, or a couple other things, sorry. So one is artificial intelligence, computer science, and data science. So we actually are working on, and we're really, really close to announcing a date for a one-day conference on artificial intelligence. That's, of course, a real question out there in the districts. I think I've already told you in an earlier work session that this summer I went to multiple meetings where it was almost like the agenda had been hijacked. We went with this agenda, but when we got there, what everybody wanted to talk about was artificial or augmented intelligence. So we are gonna have a one-day session on that. It'll continue to grow and change. There's the CS EdCon, which is the big computer science conference, coming up in early November. That's going to be kind of the main topic there. We'll have 5 or 6 people there. So just know that's coming up. You'll see it when it goes out. We're working now on the invitees. Probably are going to have it before the Christmas break. Maybe after the 1st of January, but we're trying to find a day when we get most people to come in. And this will just be a one-day meeting to kind of introduce what the issues are, but also what the opportunities are, because AI does pose a lot of opportunities for us for the future, and it is here to stay. So how are we going to work with it? How are we going to incorporate it? Same way with data science. We've been piloting a program with ESSER funds called Quant Hub, which is a data science program. It's built into our mathematics. A few schools have been using it and they love it. Now there are other states calling, wanting to talk about it. So we're getting more and more schools that want to get into it. So this whole idea of data science, data analysis, computer science, artificial intelligence, they all appear to be coming together, and there's just a lot of student and teacher interest in it. So I want to just keep that on your radar. I mentioned this to superintendents yesterday, as these are things that I think over the next 5 or 6 years, we're going to end up spending a lot of time on. We're probably going to have policies around it. We're going to have to think about how we help our students maneuver through these waters. So you'll see that coming up. And then another one is graduation and college and career readiness. So, y'all approved last year a code change to require college and career readiness. The legislature, they readopted what you had already adopted with one change, and that is that they moved it up from the class of 27 to the class of 26 to make it effective. So we feel good about that, but it means it's a year faster coming. One of the things we've been talking about internally that I'd like to bring to you after the first of the year, I see my staff taking copious notes, and they should, so, is changing our high school report card to put more weight on that college and career readiness piece. So now the smallest piece is CCR, but that seems to be something y'all are interested in, the legislature's interested in it, the business community's interested in it, our students demonstrated college and career readiness in some way. So maybe changing our weight on our report card to correspond with that 2026 requirement so that it meant more. It means more points on the report card. Now, we're limited a little bit with what we can do with the federal report card, because under the federal law, the overwhelming weight on the report card has to be a standardized test. In high school, currently we use the ACT. And so we'll never be able to get away from that until ESSA, unless they change the law, because feds require that. But I'm getting more and more business kind of people and some legislators asking about this CCR, because our state report card, our A through F report card, does not have to match, and it no longer matches our federal report card. So we can look at that as maybe changing the weights on our state report card. I'm just throwing this out cold to you. I'm glad for you to ask questions, but I'm not expecting you to be able to discuss it today. It's just something that I'd like for us to discuss maybe in January, and I wanted to put it on your radar to think about. I think it's good if I can throw things out there for you to be thinking about as you see superintendents, school people, ask them what they think about it, so that when we come back and have a discussion in a couple of months, you're not getting it cold on that day. So that's something I'd like for us to discuss. I'd like to do it in the January work session, if you would. So the report card will come out in December, and then it'll be fresh on everybody's mind. Okay, this is what the report card looks like now. Now, what about if we look at changing the weights? What could it look like in the future? Yes, ma'am.
I attended a meeting of District 6 superintendents, and of course, they're all very concerned about the ACT, as we've heard from other board members too. And their question, and I didn't know the answer, and I haven't looked it up, so I apologize for asking possibly a crazy question. But their question was, why can work keys, which is more aligned with all students, not be used as our federal test?
Well, it's a good question. I'll ask. I'm gonna get Ms. Martin to ask that question, but my suspicion is that it's not considered an academic test by the U.S. Department of Education. Because they're real specific. It has to be an academic measure of reading and math. And the work keys is, I mean, it is a work readiness test. It's not, does have some basic, really basic math and reading, but it's not what I would call an academic test. Now, one of the things I'm learning in talking to superintendents, remember you get new people who come on too. They, you know, and the S is now what, 7 or 8 years old, and so people miss that academic piece, that's the requirement, that it has to be an academic measure. But let me ask about that and make sure. There is also discussion, I don't know if this came up in your meeting, among superintendents about going back to a graduation type exam or an end of course test.
Yeah.
So we did a survey. We've had over 500 respondents, about 77 superintendents, is that right? 73 superintendents. So we're going through that data now, but it appears to be about evenly split. About half the people want to stick with ACT and about half want to go with something more like a graduation exam. So we're actually getting a presentation together for you guys on that to look at that. But we'll ask about word keys. Would that pass the federal muster or not?
It's the academic piece, Dr. Mackey, you're accurate. It has to be aligned with your current course of study. And that was the reason why work keys is not one of the things that were considered previously.
Okay.
Because of the academic piece, it has to be an ELA in mathematics and aligned to course of study. And that's the reason why.
There's the answer.
There's the answer. So we could develop a test, but it would be developing our own or sticking with ACT or something like that. So that's one, and then there was one other thing that I wanted to mention to you coming up. I got myself off. I gotta look back at my notes. Are there other questions while I look back and see if I can find it?
Any other business?
Dr. Mackey?
Yes,
We had
sir.
a brief conversation dealing with some national things about chain of leadership. I don't think you're gonna disappear or have a heart attack or go in the hospital, but in your absence, clearly, I think we need to define who is in charge should you become incapacitated. And I don't know who it is. I know that we have chief of staff and deputy superintendents, and I assume you can define that, or the board define that, or somehow, it's not clearly defined to me who is in charge in your absence.
It's been the board making that decision.
Yeah.
At the time it happens.
Yeah, when it happens.
Yeah, I mean,
But in the meantime, between it happening and the board
Tommy
meeting,
Bice is a good example, a recent board. He didn't get
I'm sorry,
sick. He didn't
tell
get
me,
sick,
if
but-
you can help me understand, I just don't understand.
No, it's just,
Organizational chart.
no, not for somebody sick, but just, unexpected.
That's what I'm saying, if he,
Yeah, and so we came up with an alternative within the department, remember that one?
I think you could, so on a day-to-day basis, like if I'm gonna be, like over, like the week after Christmas, there's a lot, the department's open and a lot of people here. We always make sure there is an administrator in charge. It's
I'm not
either
talking about
myself
that.
or Mr. Markham, and if neither one of us can be there, then one of the two deputies. If
I'm not
there's
talking about that, I'm talking about something more significant than a day or two.
Yeah.
I'm saying, for an example, you have a stroke this afternoon, you're 52.
You're making
Or,
reference.
no, but, or,
I know where he's coming from. We don't
You
have
know
an
something
organization.
we don't know.
I think you would have to, I think, Dr. Reynolds, by
I don't
the
care how to
law,
do it.
what has to happen is the board would have to convene and appoint an acting superintendent at the time.
And that's what we've done, even
And
going
that-
back to
right,
Dr.
and that's
Richardson
what,
when he left.
When Dr. Bice left in a hurry,
Yeah.
the board did that.
And that
appointed
was
an
the
acting
most rushed, because before we had somebody we selected back in '95, when Dr. Richardson left. And
well,
so,
with that
I mean,
understanding,
when it came on board, excuse me, and Dr. Teague left, let me clear that.
And that's been
That's
generally,
been a long time ago.
the couple of times I know, that's usually been the lawyer. I know Larry Craven's did
It
it
has
one
been,
time.
and then Dr. Richardson left and went to the University of Alabama at Auburn. And
We don't disagree with
remember
that.
And so, I mean, we have had situations over the years where we've had to have,
But I
to
didn't
make
know-
those decisions, and it's been the board. making those
I didn't
decisions.
know if, without it being an emergency situation, we could implement a plan between the event and the board convening so that there was a clear delineation of what happens. Because I don't know that that happens now. I mean, if you convene the board, if,
And it's been different every time, because, for different reasons.
you're talking
Maybe
about
you
every
could have
time
a
where somebody
conversation and share.
actually vacated the position.
Yes.
But in the case, never mind.
In other words, if there's a health issue.
Right.
And he cannot continue, but I don't foresee that, but
You
each
never
time
foresee that.
it's been different, similar but different, and we've had it, it hasn't been that difficult to take care
Mr.
of.
Swan, if there is anything in writing, since you are counsel, could you put something out in writing that answers that question and gives us a clear definition of what the steps would be for the board to take? Since that is your role. Okay, great, thank you.
And I think that's a good point, because I think the issue is, a lot of places have an organizational chart, and I don't think there's one here, that's the thing.
No, and it's been different every
case by
time.
case,
Yeah,
right.
because
So that would
we've
be
had,
helpful.
Jason could become.
Yeah, we have an organization.
We have
do have one.
yes.
We have an
Oh,
organization
yes.
chart.
Well, would that not go into effect?
It's in our manual. We
It's
have
just
an
different.
organizational.
And
Oh.
we've had one every time, we've had an
Okay.
organizational chart, it's just been different every time.
You do have an organizational
Well,
chart.
we have
The
to choose.
quick- But
Okay.
so the person who is acting superintendent, I mean, there's not an acting superintendent on
No.
the organizational
Right,
chart.
right.
The board has to appoint.
Okay.
If I were to become incapacitated, which I don't intend to do, I
Right.
realize could happen this afternoon, the board would have to appoint
Okay.
an acting superintendent
Gotcha.
to carry out business
Mhm.
of the board,
Right.
those kind of things.
Gotcha.
But,
And then the law
Okay.
requires to have an interim within a certain time.
Exactly.
So maybe
Okay.
that's what would be helpful.
Yes.
Because there is a process prescribed already.
Okay.
It just, the person is not, the position.
Right.
But like Dr. Mackey was saying, he has the authority as agency head to designate somebody to, like, say,
Right.
sign on his behalf on certain contracts.
Mhm.
So, I guess it depends on the level of incapacity.
And that's what she's saying.
But if he
Okay.
already has that set up, maybe that's.
so that's already
next step.
set up now,
Okay.
so that, like, for signing purposes, they're already set up. There's a letter on file across the street for who can sign documents on my behalf if I'm
Okay.
unable to sign.
Okay.
So that part's done.
Okay.
But now for you to take action on something, you need a recommendation from the superintendent, and you'd have to appoint an acting superintendent to do
Okay.
that.
Gotcha.
I think Dr. Reynolds is asking, would there be like a trigger where just somebody
No.
automatically became
So
the
it's
acting
not.
superintendent, or would you have to have a meeting, which is the way it currently is?
Right.
But we'll let, Ms. West said,
That's
what
a
if
good
we
point.
let Jason write something up?
Because he'd have to change the law to do that, the way the law is set up. But yes, I think that would be helpful.
Okay.
Thank you.
And thank you for that recommendation.
Absolutely.
And
Is
so-
there anything else?
Yes, the other thing I was on my list to tell you about is thinking about the calendar. Again, this is early, but in November work session, we always bring you a calendar for what the next year looks like, and then you vote on it in December. So and I know that's typically the second Thursday, and then except in July. But looking at those retreat dates, we've kind of set it up to be the last week of January, the last week of August. We've done that for the last couple of years. It seems to work. But if you're thinking about something different, if y'all let Ms. West know, would that be okay?
Absolutely.
Because the plan right now is we're essentially just going to replicate the calendar from 23. And so probably that last Wednesday in January, and again the last Wednesday in August. But I wanted you to, again, be thinking about that, because if somebody says, well, no, that won't work for me, what if we do a different week? Then if you be thinking about that rather than me throwing it out cold to you next month. So I'll let folks talk to you if they've got questions about that. And that's it.
Any other business? I have just one question, and I meant to email it to Mr. Markham, and I totally forgot this week. Not earth-shattering, I'm just interested in the board knowing our enrollment numbers in the state. I'm used to calling it the 20-day count at the local level, but our enrollment in our districts, just so that we can see, you know, we've got areas that are growing, we've got areas that are not growing, but I think it's good to have that information to know how many children are in your buildings. So if we could possibly sometime in November, if the board could get their enrollment numbers.
Without objection, I'd like that to be a 3-year cycle sequence.
My district is growing.
Mine is.
I have some places that are very, very busy, and then others that are getting smaller.
Yes, ma'am.
Anything else? All right, we are adjourned, 1:29.
I should mention that.